Two of the greatest guitarists who ever lived sat across from each other in 2012. Keith Richards, drunk and emotional. Eric Clapton, sober and shocked. And Keith said something that would haunt Clapton for years. "You know what the difference between us is, Eric? You're a great guitarist who wishes he could be a great rock star. I'm a great rock star who wishes he could be a great guitarist. We both got what we didn't want and spent our whole lives wishing we had what the other one had." Clapton sat in silence, processing. Was that true? Had he spent 60 years being jealous of Keith's freedom while Keith was jealous of his technical ability? Had they both been chasing each other's gifts while hating their own? Keith poured another drink. The fans see Keith Richards and Eric Clapton, two legends, two gods, but we see what we're not. You see me as the wild one, the free one. I see you as the real musician, the artist, and we're both miserable because we can't have what the other one has. It was the most honest conversation they'd ever had, and it revealed something tragic, that the things we're great at are often the things we take for granted, and the things we envy in others are often the things they wish they could escape. November 2012, New York City. A charity event had just ended, one of those high-profile music industry gatherings where legends show up, play a few songs, raise money for a good cause, then disappear into private dinners and after-parties. Eric Clapton, 67 years old, had performed earlier. Keith Richards, 69, had done the same. They'd shared a stage briefly, played together on one song, the way old friends do at these events. Professional, familiar, no drama. But after the event, Keith had pulled Clapton aside. "Stay for a drink, just us. Been too long since we actually talked." Clapton hesitated. He'd been sober since 1987, 25 years. He didn't drink anymore, didn't hang around people who were drinking heavily. It was a boundary he'd learned to maintain. But this was Keith. They'd known each other since the 1960s, shared stages, shared struggles, shared the strange burden of being called guitar gods when you're just trying to play music. "I'll have water," said Clapton. "But yeah, let's talk." They ended up in a private room at the venue, just the two of them. A table, two chairs, two guitars leaning against the wall. They'd brought them up from the stage, habit from decades of always having an instrument nearby, and a bottle of whiskey that someone on Keith's team had procured. Keith poured himself a glass, a generous pour, then another. For the first hour, they talked about normal things, music industry gossip, other musicians, health problems. Both of them were dealing with aging bodies that had been through decades of abuse. Grandchildren. Keith's hands shook slightly as he lit another cigarette, the tremor of age and hard living. Clapton noticed but said nothing. They'd both earned their scars.
But as Keith drank more, the conversation shifted, got deeper, more honest. The kind of conversation that only happens late at night between old friends when the walls finally come down. "Eric," Keith said, his voice slightly slurred but his eyes focused, intense in a way that cut through the alcohol. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Of course." Keith looked down at his whiskey glass, swirling the liquid, watching it catch the light. "I've been jealous of you since 1965. Clapton laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Jealous of me? Keith, you're—" "I'm serious." Keith's voice was firm. Not joking, not performing. This was real Keith, not the persona. "I'm jealous of you. Always have been." Clapton stopped laughing. "Why would you be jealous of me?" "Because you're a real guitarist, a real musician, and I'm just a guy who looks good on stage and knows 3 chords." "Keith, that's not—" "It is true. You know it's true. Everyone knows it's true. You're technically brilliant. You understand music theory. You can play any style, blues, jazz, rock, classical. You're Eric fucking Clapton, slow hand, the guitar god." Keith took another drink. "And me? I'm Keith Richards. I look cool, I've got the image, the lifestyle, the attitude, but musically, I'm limited. I know it, you know it, everyone knows it." Clapton didn't know what to say. This wasn't how he thought of Keith at all. "In the 60s, Keith continued, when we were both young and coming up, I used to watch you play with the Yardbirds, with Cream, solo, and I'd think, that's what a real guitarist sounds like. That's what I wish I could do. But I couldn't. I didn't have your technique, your understanding, your soul in the playing. Keith. So I became something else. I became the wild one, the dangerous one, the one who didn't give a fuck. And people loved it. The Rolling Stones became huge. I became a rock star. But inside, I always knew I'm not the guitarist Eric is. I'm just faking it, hiding behind attitude and image." Clapton sat stunned. He'd never heard Keith talk like this, never heard this vulnerability, this insecurity.
You're a real musician, Eric. An artist. Someone who actually understands what they're doing. I'm just a showman, and I've been jealous of that my whole fucking life." There was silence for a long moment. Keith refilled his glass. His hand wasn't quite steady. Finally, Clapton spoke. "Keith, can I tell you something?" "Yeah?" "I've been jealous of you since 1965. Keith looked up, confused, genuinely confused, like the alcohol had made him miss something. "What?" "I'm serious. I've spent my entire career being jealous of you." "That doesn't make any sense." "It makes perfect sense. You know what I see when I look at you? Freedom, wildness, someone who doesn't give a fuck what anyone thinks. You're unapologetic. You're rock and roll, pure rock and roll. No compromise, no seeking approval. You just are." Clapton leaned forward, his voice gaining intensity. "I've spent my whole life seeking approval, Keith. Trying to prove I'm good enough, trying to be technically perfect, because I'm afraid if I'm not perfect, people won't respect me. I care what everyone thinks, critics, fans, other musicians. I care too much, and it's exhausting." Keith was listening now, the drunkenness seeming to fade as he focused. "You don't care," Clapton continued. "You never cared. You just got on stage and did your thing, made the music you wanted to make, lived the life you wanted to live. You were free, and I envied that freedom every single day." "But I wasn't free," Keith said quietly. "I was hiding. The wild lifestyle, the not giving a fuck attitude, that was all to cover up the fact that I wasn't as good a musician as I wanted to be, as good as you were." Clapton shook his head. "And the technical perfection, the constant practicing, the need to be respected as a serious musician, that was all to cover up the fact that I wasn't as free as I wanted to be, as free as you were." They looked at each other across the table. Two old men, two guitar legends, both finally seeing something they'd been blind to for 50 years. Keith laughed, a sad, ironic laugh. "So let me get this straight. I spent 50 years wishing I could play like you, and you spent 50 years wishing you could be like me. Apparently. We're idiots."
Apparently. Keith poured another drink, offered the bottle to Clapton, who waved it off, a gesture so familiar between them now it required no words. "You know what the difference between us is, Eric?" Keith said, his voice now philosophical, the kind of drunk wisdom that comes late at night when the truth becomes unavoidable. "You're a great guitarist who wishes he could be a great rock star. I'm a great rock star who wishes he could be a great guitarist. We both got what we didn't want, and we spent our whole lives wishing we had what the other one had." Clapton felt those words land deep. Was that true? Had his entire career been defined by wanting to be something he wasn't? "The fans see Keith Richards and Eric Clapton," Keith continued, gesturing with his glass, whiskey sloshing slightly. "Two legends, two gods, two guys who have it all. But we see what we're not. You see me as the wild one, the free one, the one who doesn't care. I see you as the real musician, the artist, the one with actual talent. And we're both fucking miserable because we can't have what the other one has." "I'm not miserable," Clapton said quietly. "Aren't you? Haven't you spent your whole life trying to be someone you're not? Trying to be more like me? More wild, more free, more unapologetic?" Clapton thought about it. His substance abuse years, wasn't that partly trying to be more rock and roll, more like Keith? His relationship drama, his wild behavior in the 70s and 80s, wasn't that him trying to be the bad boy instead of the serious musician? "Maybe," Clapton admitted. "And I," Keith said, "spent my whole life trying to hide the fact that I'm not as good a musician as you, creating this persona of the wild man who doesn't need technique because he's got soul. But it was bullshit. I wanted the technique. I wanted the respect. I wanted to be taken seriously as a musician, not just as a rock star." Keith looked at his hands. Old hands, weathered hands, hands that had played guitar for 60 years, hands that had held needles and bottles and guitars and survived things that should have killed them. "You know what's tragic about all this?" Keith asked. "What?" "The thing I envied about you, your technical ability, your musical depth, that's the thing that makes you unhappy. It's the thing that makes you feel trapped, like you always have to be perfect, always have to prove something. And the thing you envied about me, my freedom, my wildness, that's the thing I used to hide my insecurity. It wasn't real freedom, it was armor."
Clapton nodded slowly. "So we both envied each other's prison." "Exactly. I envied your need to be perfect. You envied my need to appear not to care. And both of those needs were prison cells, just different kinds of prison." They sat in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable silence that only comes between old friends who've known each other long enough to not need words. Outside, New York City hummed with late-night life, but in this room, time seemed suspended. Finally, Clapton spoke. "So what do we do with this information?" Keith shrugged. "Fuck if I know. We're too old to change now. I'm still going to be Keith Richards, the wild one, the one who doesn't care, the rock star with attitude. And you're still going to be Eric Clapton, the serious musician, the technical master, the one seeking respect. But now we know it's bullshit? Now we know it's bullshit." Keith raised his glass. "To 50 years of being jealous of each other's prisons." Clapton picked up his water glass. "To 50 years of being blind to what we actually had." They clinked glasses. "You know what's funny?" Keith said after a moment. "What?" "The fans see us as so different. Keith and Eric, the wild one and the serious one, the rock star and the musician. But we're the same. We're both insecure guys who picked different ways of hiding our insecurity and spent our careers envying each other's hiding spots." "Exactly." Keith picked up his guitar, a beat-up Telecaster that looked like it had survived multiple wars. He started playing, fingers moving over the strings with the loose, rhythmic style that defined his sound. Not technically complex, but undeniably Keith Richards. "This is what I can do. Open G tuning, 5 strings, simple riffs, rock and roll. It's limited, but it's mine. And you know what? It works. The Stones have been playing variations of this for 60 years, and people still come." He stopped playing, looked at Clapton. "Now you play." Clapton picked up the other guitar, a well-maintained Stratocaster. He started playing. Complex blues progressions, technical mastery, every note precise, emotional, perfect. Keith watched, nodding. "See, that's what I can't do, that understanding of the blues, that technical fluency, that musicianship." "But you don't need it," Clapton said, still playing. "Your style works perfectly for what the Stones do. It's exactly what's needed." "And your style works perfectly for what you do. It's exactly what's needed." Clapton stopped playing. "So we're both good at what we do?" "We're both great at what we do. We're fucking legends. But we spent our whole lives wishing we were great at what the other one does. Which is stupid. Which is very stupid," Keith laughed, "but very human. Everyone wants what they don't have, especially musicians, especially us." They played together for a while after that, not performing, just two old friends with guitars, playing for themselves. Keith's rhythmic, simple style blending with Clapton's more complex, blues-based approach, different but complementary, the way they'd been for 50 years without really appreciating it. The music filled the small room, intimate and honest in a way that concert halls could never capture. Around 3 a.m., they finally called it a night. As they were leaving, Keith said, "Eric, thanks for listening to my drunk rambling. It wasn't rambling, it was honest. Will this change anything?" Clapton thought about it. "Probably not. We'll both keep being who we are. But maybe I'll appreciate who I am a little more, instead of wishing I was you. And maybe I'll appreciate who I am instead of wishing I was you. Maybe." They hugged, the kind of hug that old men give when they've said things that needed saying. "See you next time," Keith said. "See you next time." They didn't see each other again for 2 years. When they did, at another charity event in London, the weather cold and gray, neither of them mentioned that conversation. It stayed private, sacred, a moment of vulnerability between two people who'd spent their lives building walls. But something had shifted. When they played together that night, there was less competition, less comparison. Just two old guitarists playing music, appreciating what each brought to the moment. But Clapton never forgot what Keith said that night. "You're a great guitarist who wishes he could be a great rock star. I'm a great rock star who wishes he could be a great guitarist. We both got what we didn't want." And Clapton finally understood. Keith was right. They'd both spent their careers being jealous of each other's prisons, both blind to their own gifts, both wanting to be something they weren't. But maybe, just maybe, knowing that was the first step toward accepting what they were. Two of the greatest guitarists who ever lived, both deeply insecure, both envying what the other had, both blind to what they actually were, and both, in their own way, perfect at what they did, even if it took 50 years and a drunk confession to see it.